Everybody wants to go. Good afternoon. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is still Thursday, January 16th, 2025. It is 2:30 p.m. and we have the Department of Corrections with us to talk about their budget. Thank you for your flexibility in coming in 15 minutes earlier. Maybe everybody gets to go home a little earlier that way. So we have a lot of new members, and so we'll introduce ourselves and then introduce yourself and then take it away. So we'll start with Dave.
Pleased to meet you. I'm Dave Iacovone. I live in Morrisville, and I represent the Lamoille, Washington district.
Okay, thanks, Richard.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm John Kosenska of the town of Burke. I represent Essex Caledonian District.
Thanks.
Hi,
Hi.
Mike Nigro, represent Bennington. Tom Stevens from Waterbury, representing the Washington Chittenden District.
Good afternoon, Jim Harrison. I represent Chittenden, Mendon, Killington.
I'm Robin Shy and I represent Middlebury.
I represent Burlington.
Trevor Squirrel, Underhill and Jericho.
Wayne Rush, Franklin 5, Highgate, Franklin, Berkshire, and Richford.
Hi, I'm Mike Morwicki and I represent the Wyndham 4 District, Putney and Dummerston.
Hi, Lynn Dickinson. I represent St. Albans.
Nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me. Kristen Calver, Deputy Commissioner of DOC.
Thank you. Okay, so we all.
Yeah, it's quick. You have a very brief packet there. Essentially, it's a quick summary of the 2 lines that we have to present, which start on page 4. And in the Correctional Services Appropriation B 338. Give everyone a minute.
Oh, yes. Correctional services.
Yes. That first line, you'll see 500,000 in GF and federal funds, and that represents capacity building funds that get us started on our work for the 1115 waiver. And that's the Center for Medicaid Services that will allow us to offer pre and post Medicaid paid for services for incarcerated individuals, specifically around medication and care management.
So this is healthcare related.
That's healthcare related. And again, these are capacity building funds. So they get that work started. Any changes we need to make to our vendor management system or other databases within the agency.
Please, Chair.
When is this actually going to be implemented?
January 1st, 2026 is our implementation date for that.
And this is something that got decided after the budget was approved last year. Dickinson?
Yeah, thank you. The way this reads, correct, it would provide Medicaid coverage for individuals transitioning out of incarceration under the waiver. Correct. Is this going to cover people who are incarcerated now? Because my understanding is they're not covered now.
They're not covered now. This will provide coverage 90 days pre-release and then a period of time post-release for that bridge care management.
And then they would have to basically go into the normal eligibility.
Correct. Yes.
Was there a problem with them being eligible for Medicare after coming out? Medicaid after coming out?
Not that I'm aware of. I just don't think that just allows us to extend the coverage after that period. So if they're released completely from our system, this still allows them to access those services for free under the waiver.
Okay.
I can chime in a bit on that, Representative. Sorry, I be on the record, policy director for the department. Part of the reason we so aggressively pursued the 1115 waiver is that we know that for folks who are transitioning out of our jurisdiction to the community, sometimes encounter issues of reapplying for Medicaid status in particular. Folks oftentimes have a lapse in coverage, and the way that our Medicaid, the MMIS claim processing system is designed, we must terminate rather than pause coverage. So part of the 1115 waiver, which the summer we did receive approval from the Biden administration for, is to create a system that automatically pauses coverage so that as soon as sort of return to the community, you can reactivate it or 90 days before.
Okay. So they might have been on Medicaid before getting incarcerated, and then it was difficult for them to get back on Medicaid or I've heard that this is a problem for drug treatment. Facility, opportunities.
It really stems from something called the Medicaid inmate exclusion policy, which was promulgated in 1965 Social Security Act, which created Medicaid. So there's federal law that prohibits incarcerated people in America
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on that? Okay.
Okay, the next two lines down, I believe you've had discussions previously about the Agency of Digital Services service level agreement. This is our portion to help fund the FY 25 cost. That's it as far as the ups and downs.
Right, so the 159,481 is the part that came out from central office.
Yep.
That we heard about yesterday.
Yes.
And the other one is your own
Additional.
special extra.
Correct.
As expert.
Okay, and ADS is coming in after you, so we'll be
Perfect.
learning more about what that's all about. And that's your budget adjustment.
That's it.
Okay.
Questions? Yeah. From Stevens? did you want to-
Questions that, while they're not specifically related to budget adjustment.
Okay.
I've come from a different committee dealing with labor issues. And so very familiar with the issues that have been going on with the Department of Corrections and state employees. And I just wanted to ask a couple questions, if I could, just about the status. We know that, according to the VSEA, that the Department of Corrections, the work is in a crisis situation. I was just wondering, the budget adjustment seems so light compared to what's going on in your world. And I was just wondering if you could share with us, the staffing issues. Friends of mine who have worked with corrections over the years have reported, mandatory overtime, 16 hours a day, 12-hour shifts, whatever, all of the things that are out there. And I'm just curious if you can address, like, what is the status? It sounds like it's just yet another function of government. There's many of these functions that are unsustainable from a human resource perspective. And I just would love to get your view on what's going on and what these folks are experiencing. I mean, I've heard from them, but I just wanted to hear from
Yes.
you.
Excuse me. I believe the word crisis is accurate. And I think I want to also say it's a national crisis and not one that we're battling on our own. We're doing a lot of work in the national space to try to understand corrections differently and how we can change our work to address those staffing issues in our facilities. We acknowledge the work is incredibly difficult. The average age lifespan expectancy of a correctional officer is late 50s, I believe, which is dramatically different from the rest of us. So that just really speaks to how heavy of a load that work is. We're doing a lot of different things with our new strategic plan to look at staffing in a really deep dive kind of way to reimagine corrections. And again, just try to understand how we can do our work differently. Maybe that relieves staff as they are now, and then looks to the future to see, how the burden can change so that folks are not working 16-hour shifts any longer. We absolutely recognize that it's a major problem, and it's our top priority this year to look into that.
The conditions, again, I've never been, so I can only imagine, but just the status of one's life expectancy after putting in any kind of time in a highly stressful situation is, and again, there's been a history of temp employees versus full-time employees. And I appreciate that it's a national issue, just like on affordability of housing and insurance and everything else that seems to be crumbling, things that we I don't want to say took for granted. But what is it in your power to like, there's management and there's labor. There's always going to be a tension, but if they're human resources, they can't be replaced by AI. Where are we going with, I mean, I understand if staffing is difficult to do, what does it mean for the people who have to work 16 hours a day, shorten their lifespans, shorten their marriages, it takes a special person, I think, in some respects to serve in that position.
It does.
And I would hope, I hear from you that it's our goal to make sure that they're treated humanely. So what's in process of trying to restaff or, make sure that we can move towards a system where, where the humaneness isn't just passed off because we're all in a difficult crisis situation.
Certainly. We have a number of different things in the works. We're actively partnering with our labor partners at the VSEA. We're looking at ways to provide wellness initiatives for staff, professional development, looking at that supervisory tier to, push the professional development down and so that folks are supported. We have clinical staff on hand. So if there's an incident or if someone just needs to speak to someone, they have access to that clinical support. We've built out our peer support program recently to expand that work. So folks are in the facilities, not only responding to incidents, but just showing up to be available. Folks need to talk. In our facilities, we've been looking at stress relief rooms, just quiet spaces for folks to be able to decompress. And really, again, like I said, looking at ways where we can reimagine corrections so that there isn't such a heavy burden on that job class itself. And so they have more supports and leverages to pull when the staffing shortages occur.
And that's something you work with corrections committee
Yes.
and labor committees?
Yes, absolutely.
The commissioners testified on that, right?
At the moment.
That's why you didn't hear it. But to the deputy commissioner's point, in the last 2 fiscal years, we put more than $30 million above our contracting agreement into the correctional staffing, the state of Vermont. So that's money above the contracted rate, taxpayer dollars infused into that system directly to correctional officers to stabilize our staffing system. At the same time, we know it's more than just money. Money's a big piece of it. It's why we did fold it in as well into our permanent contract, not just through side letters, but build it into the permanent pay scale for correctional employees that people move through the steps and grades faster. There's a unique pay scale now just for correctional employees, as well as higher hourly rates as well. We also have a partnership with Senator Sanders' office, a $4.5 million congressionally directed spending package with the Community College of Vermont to offer free CCD classes for all correctional employees. So really trying to provide different avenues for folks to support them in this incredibly difficult work. And we know, looking at national data, that correctional officers face the highest rate of non-fatal workplace violence in the country. It is almost twice that of law enforcement. These are very difficult jobs. Folks face higher rates of PTSD than combat veterans. As Kristen mentioned, life expectancy for correctional officers is about 15 years less than the average American.
So there was an interesting article in Governing last week. I don't know if anybody happened to see it, that Pennsylvania is testing out a different approach for both offenders who are incarcerated and the staff. And they're taking a page out of the Norwegian system. I'm Norwegian, so I'm a little biased, but their whole attitude and focus is about rehabilitation. And they've also designed their prisons different. I mean, ours are based on a punishment system. I mean, we have old prisons and they're not designed. So Pennsylvania has taken a couple of their prisons and modified parts of them, and they've been testing both for the offenders who were there as well as the staff, and they're having pretty good results when it comes to stress levels, reduced violence, significantly reduced violence, offenders who are making more progress towards rehabilitation and so they'll be more ready to re-enter. It was a really interesting article about what can be done. So it was focusing on everybody who's living and working in these buildings, not just one side or the other. So anyway, I encourage you to look at that.
So, and we have seen that. That's why we're modeling our new correctional facility for women after a model in Maine, and that looks to Scandinavian facilities.
Right.
You know, our facilities are very old.
Yes.
Chittenden, which is the women's facility, is over 50 years old, and it is crumbling. It costs about $3 million a year to maintain and has about $12 million in for maintenance. And so for the staff that work in that building every day and our community partners with the Vermont Network and Lund and others, it takes an incredible toll.
Yes, it does. So I look forward to that happening soon. We've been talking about that one as long as I've been in the legislature. And Trevor, I think you may have had your hand up, and I know
have a
Wayne did
different
too.
kind of question.
Okay.
So if it's on the same topic,
Sort of.
Okay.
I'd rather.
Okay, why don't you go first and then we'll have.
You can go first. My question is, I've heard rumors that, that you have a large extra cost from people being out on mandatory leave because of complaints that occur within the facility. And that may be a substantial expense. Can you tell us anything about that?
I'm not familiar with what the specific incident you're speaking of. I know that just
In
folks
general.
generally being out on like FMLA, workers' comp, other sorts of medical leave, military leave do contribute to staff vacancies, which contributes to folks working more overtime, eventually our vacancy rate. So those are definitely factors that do increase our costs, for sure.
I'm more concerned with whether there are frivolous complaints that are going on that are costing us a lot of money that maybe this system could be shifted a little bit in order to avoid those happening.
Mhm.
I don't know how big a problem it is. I heard it might be million.
Yeah, there is a transfer on the BAA of 3.1 million around the commercial industries fund. And I thought maybe Kristen could just speak to that,
sure.
just so we understand.
The one-time request, I think 3.2 million, I believe.
Yeah, it's a little less than 3.
Okay.
This is in the language also. It must be.
So this is the Vermont Correctional Industries and Vermont Offender Work Program deficit that has grown over a number of years. There's several factors that contribute to that. Pre-pandemic, we started to move into the open office environments, which before the state or correctional industries were supplying furniture to state offices. Once we moved to those open office environments, they went to modular furniture from other larger corporations. So that the wood shop eventually fizzled out. And I think with some other industries that there was just no need for in the communities. And then we had limited places that could purchase it. I think it was limited to state entities, federal, and then some nonprofits under certain circumstances. So we weren't able to sell to a large range of folks, which really crippled that work. And then the pandemic hit, and then we had to shut down work crews in the field. There was restricted movement within the facilities. The outside world began to change. The vocational opportunities that we were offering in the facility were no longer transferable once folks were released. So the program as a whole became obsolete, and there was still payroll happening from that fund, which contributed to it. The cost of raw materials for programs that we still have, like the plate shop, grew. So the needs grew and the need shrank on the other side. So we've ended up with this compounded deficit over the years. And this is our request to fill that hole back in. Like I said, the plate shop still remains. A small portion is graphic arts as well. And that does turn a profit. It won't ever. And if we still have that 3 million that we're trying to fill in, but once that's wiped out, it does become a self-sustaining program with only 2 staff remaining. So we did take out the staff that is no longer needed and moved it to correctional services, which is that B338, which is the largest portion of our budget.
Do we still make license plates? And is that part of this area of the budget?
It is part of that area of the budget, the B341. Yes.
So this money is just to fill a long time deficit.
Correct.
And if we didn't fill it, the deficit will just be there.
It would be there eventually over time. We would be able to pay it back. It would take many, many years. The margin of profit, I guess we'll say, is very small for the plate shop. So it would take quite a long time to do that.
Yeah.
So we'll have deeper conversations.
Yes.
About the capacity situation in the big bill.
And staffing, yes. we'll make sure to ask for extra time.
And I imagine that the corrections committee will also be talking about these things.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where I'll have a little heart pang about not being able to talk about it in detail in a committee, in a policy
Yes.
committee, but I
Right.
just wanna, you know,
Go
call
on
that
the
out
record,
and
yes.
just say that, you know, I don't want to take up the 2 hours I
Right.
would want to,
Sure, yeah,
in a different place, but I
Okay.
appreciate your comments so far, and it really is for a government service. There's a lot of places that are the hardest jobs in state service. I don't know of any that are any harder than those at DOC.
yeah, I appreciate you acknowledging that for the staff, certainly.
Great. All right, well, thank you very much for being flexible and changing the time. We appreciate it. And the rest of the committee, just so Trevor knew that there was a transfer in section T in the language, so it isn't just the ups and downs. So you all have to keep remembering kind of to look at these other places so we don't leave something out, and leave something out, but we'll try not to. So we have ADS is going to be able to come at 3. So